Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents PrimeVerse, Forced Login, by R.K. Billiau, narrated by Eric Jason Martin. Chapter 1. It figures the first and only time I won anything, it was the death lottery. When my number came up as one of the first volunteers to PrimeVerse, I tried to run. Whatever their grand plan, I wanted no part. I was a scavenger. I combed through the dead and decaying cities to find worthwhile things among the scraps, and I was good at my job. I thought with all my knowledge of hidey holes, I would be able to escape detection. I was wrong. I didn't even make it very far, with the biometric and DNA scanners all over the place, but at least I tried. I ran to let them know I remained unwilling. Not everyone was as excited about dying as the media would make you think. Now, when I say dying, I don't mean all the way dead dying, just removed from being a drain on the world dying. They uploaded my consciousness into their new virtual world, and then my body was sent to the separators, broken down into its constituent parts, and shipped off to wherever the need was greatest, or whoever could afford it. Probably some corporate middle manager who needed a new liver, with the rest going into the "I can't believe it's not Soylent" vats. When it comes to uploading yourself, I'm an unbeliever, to say the least, and a vehement outspoken annoyance, to say the most. I would rather regular die than live forever in somebody else's fantasy world. At least that's what I told myself. My skepticism ran deep of the fun new world to experience and enjoy the ads portrayed. The world turning to crap was nothing new. Massive overpopulation, coupled with a complete inability to leave this planet in any kind of meaningful way, made for a life of squalor for most of the inhabitants. Colonies on Mars and the Moon existed, but the Moon was too expensive and Mars too remote. In another 50 years, those would be good options, but for now, out of reach. No. Instead, our society adopted a death lottery as a way of helping reduce population. Buying your way out was always an option, like anything, but that was out of reach for almost everyone except the 1%. In a demoralizingly short amount of time, I got captured, my head drilled into, and my consciousness sucked out and shoved into their experiment. I opened my eyes to a bright sun and the bluest sky of my life. The air felt strange, lighter. It didn't take long to realize the difference. The stench of humanity, the ever-present smell of urine, sweat, and smog, no longer afflicted me like a debuff. I breathed in fresh air. It was something I could get used to. Another thing different? I felt good. None of my constant aches and pains, my old foot injury, way too expensive to fix, didn't even hurt. That pain had become family over the years. My eyes widened as I looked down at myself. I wore almost nothing. A pair of flesh-colored boxer briefs were all that graced my new magnificent body. I flexed muscles that would put the kind you see in all those male enhancement ads to shame. While I was admiring my new, very impressive body, I wondered if they left anything the same. I smashed my face between my fingers, trying to feel what was left of me. It felt normal-ish, I guess. Blind facial recognition wasn't my forte. I'd have to wait until I could see my reflection somewhere. I spun around to look at my surroundings and gasped in wonder. A beautiful, tree-covered island surrounded by a sparkling ocean as far as the eye could see. The island didn't seem too big, but it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The brightest greens and the most vivid blues, as if someone had cranked up the saturation. Most of my life I had lived in the city. And when I say city, I mean slums. Towering gray buildings lined with dirty windows, overcrowded streets full of people and garbage. The most foliage I ever saw were weeds that sprouted up through cracks in the asphalt. I thought places like this only existed on a Microsoft desktop background. Sure, VR existed, but couldn't compare to this. Well, it might, but being prohibitively expensive, I wouldn't know. Suffice to say, it amazed me, and I was hesitantly excited. The warm sand under my feet stretched wide out in front of me. From where I stood, I couldn't see a single person. I couldn't hear anyone, and there weren't even any footprints in the sand. Where the heck were all the people? I hadn't expected to be completely alone. I craned my neck, searching for anyone else, and noticed a floating cube of glowing blue energy behind me next to a palm tree. I knew this had to be something to interact with, having played plenty of games in my time. I ignored it, not sure what would happen once I started down the path of interaction with this world. This island was feeling pretty perfect, but I wanted to stay pissed off about having my head cracked open and my gooey me-ness sucked out. I was of a mind to protest. "I won't do what you want me to!" I shouted to nobody and kicked the palm tree by the floating cube. The pain bursting from my toes for being stupid enough to kick a palm tree barefoot impressed me as much as it sucked. The programmers did a great job on that bit. But when the coconut fell, cracking me on the head and knocking me over, I knew they were just jerks. "You have suffered 1 bludgeoning damage." Yep, jerks. "Ah, screw you!" I shouted at nothing, again. Now I really refused to touch that stupid cube. I sat up, and a floating red bar in the top right of my field of view appeared, like a HUD, reading 99 out of 100. I waited a few seconds as the numbers ticked over to 100 out of 100. Well, I guess that clinched it. They did gamify life. Why did they make it hurt so much, though? I walked around the island, pondering my situation and how I was going to stick it to the man. I would show them. I would stay here for as long as possible to screw up their data sets they were sure to be collecting. The sun was warm, the ocean peaceful. The soft sand would be a nice place to sleep. My stomach growled. Wait, my stomach growled? "I'm hungry? Why do I have to eat? This is a fake world." Anger seeped off me. First, I'm forced here against my will, as good as murdered. Then I stub my toe and get conked by a coconut. A coconut! Hot damn, I'm not beaten yet, fools! I would still protest. On some level, I'm sure I was being ridiculous, but I'd already gotten this far, so why not? I grabbed the coconut and looked over the strange fruit, vegetable. In this impressive virtual world, the coconut looked like, well, a coconut, a hard, hairy rock. How was I going to eat this thing? I remembered watching some video about how the extinct natives of the sunken islands of Hawaii opened coconuts with a sharpened stick, which I was fresh out of. Time to work out my anger. I grasped the coconut in 2 hands, found the closest embedded boulder, and, gritting my teeth, slammed the hairy rock on the not hairy rock with a loud crack. My hands hurt, and the coconut received only a small dent. "Congratulations, you have increased your strength attribute. Congratulations, you have increased your conscious attribute. Congratulations, you have learned the toughness skill. You have suffered 1 bludgeoning damage." Seriously? I took damage for hurting my hands trying to open that stupid thing? What the hell? I needed to stop shouting randomly. It couldn't be healthy. I wondered if everything was a skill or attribute here. There were plenty of games where your skills needed to be trained up to advance. If this was a virtual game world, then perhaps they did the same thing here. I needed to test this out. Congratulations, you have increased your conscious attribute. Well, I guess that answered that. Time for a little more testing. I attempted to climb the coconut tree and fell off about a quarter of the way up. Congratulations, you have learned the climbing skill. Congratulations, you have learned the jumping skill. I started to run when a yellow bar appeared right under the red one. The yellow bar read, Stamina, 45 out of 100, and decreased as I ran. Congratulations, you have learned the running skill. Congratulations, you have increased your physique attribute. I only made it a little way around the island before my stamina bar wore out and forced me to rest. I plodded along towards the conveniently sittable rock right next to the floating blue cube that was humming with power. As I leaned closer, the cube pulsed with color and sound. It sounded like folding staticky sheets fresh from the dryer. It definitely wanted me to touch it. Oh, no, you don't. Not yet. I'm going to learn as much as I can before I mess with you. Congratulations, you have learned the willful ignorance skill. Oh, come on, I shouted. This was getting ridiculous. My stomach growled again. Oh yeah, that. My stamina bar showed 79%, so I sighed and got up, walking over to the coconut I tried to open before. My stamina bar continued to fill while walking, though slower than when sitting still. It appeared I might be able to do light activity when winded and keep regaining stamina. I picked up my nemesis, the coconut, and began the arduous task of slamming the thing over and over and over again on my rock chair to open it. I burned through the rest of my stamina bar, but finally heard a satisfying snap and felt the hard shell give way. Yes! I cheered at the large crack that appeared. Congratulations, you have increased your strength attribute. That seemed like an impressive gain, getting a point for opening a coconut. I wondered if the game would stay that easy. Somehow I doubted it. The coconut tasted better than anything I thought possible. I don't know if the programmers made it that way, or if, having only ever eaten various flavors of food trademark bars, had hidden the truth of food from me. It was almost enough to make me want to join in their stupid game. Almost. I counted the coconuts left in the tree. 1, 2, 3. Weren't there 3 before, too? Curious, I kicked the tree again. With the ball of my foot this time. I'm not a complete idiot. Congratulations, you have increased your conscious attribute. These constant alerts popping up in my vision were going to get annoying real quick. I wondered if there was a way to turn them off. At the thought, a floating gear popped up on my HUD in the top right corner. I mentally selected it, and a settings menu appeared. Convenient. Congratulations, you have increased your subconscious attribute. I scanned through the page to find most every option, including one to turn down or off notifications, grayed out. The tooltip stated that access would be granted after completing the tutorial zone. Ah, this was a tutorial zone. That would explain the lack of people, I guess. I knew then interacting with the blue square would be the way out of this zone. Congratulations, you have increased your subconscious attribute. I might leave just to turn off those alerts. I kicked the tree again, this time with a little more annoyance than before. A coconut plopped to the ground in front of me, spraying sand out like water from a thumb-covered hose. It looked identical to the one I opened. Looking up, I watched a miniature coconut form in the old one's spot, then grow to full size in about a minute. Pretty nifty. Infinite food, now that was a new concept. There were quite a few times when I hadn't been able to supply enough work creds to earn my daily ration of food trademark, and right here grew an all-I-could-eat buffet. I would never go hungry again. I danced a little jig until my stamina dropped off. This place was growing on me. I wondered how all these stats and skills would be tracked, and if it was something I would have access to. As an answer to my thought, a paper doll icon appeared in my field of vision. I selected it and saw my character sheet. Name, Hudson. Year, 0. Race, human. Age, 18. Class, not available. Level, 1. HP, 140. Armor, 0. Body, 130 stamina. Strength, 2. Agility, 0. Physique, 1. Mind, 110 mana. Conscious, 3. Subconscious, 2. Superconscious, 0. Heart, 107 zeal. Empathy, 0. Projection, 0. Emotion, 0. Soul, 103 spirit. Self, 0. Aura, 0. Connection, 0. Unassigned skills. Climbing, 1. Running, 1. Jumping, 1. Willful ignorance, 1. Toughness, 1. 18? I'm 22. Had they gotten it wrong, or did they start everyone at this age? Mentally selecting the equipment page, I saw a 3D representation of me standing naked except for the complimentary underwear. I zoomed in and out to check out my parts, and as I moved my body, the 3D rendering of me moved too. My face was next, and saw that yes, I still looked like me, just a little younger and a little less jaded. Zooming back out, I could tell that the body was mine also, but a buff, super me. Like an eating healthy and working out all my life kind of super me. That was nice of the people that murdered me. A consolation prize. A terrible thought struck me, and I reached down to remove the flesh-colored boxer briefs, hoping that I was not consigned to an eternity as an androgynous Ken doll. They slid down, and I breathed a sigh of relief at the sight of all my parts. Back to my menu screen, I checked out the empty equipment slots and noticed a slot containing a small pamphlet. I thought, inventory, and a pop-up appeared with my inventory. It only contained 4 slots, but since I had no idea what amount of anything would fit in a single slot, I couldn't get too upset. Although memories of past games popped into my head, upgrade your inventory slots, only 5 work creds. Ugh, I hoped DLC or microtransactions were excluded from this world, or it would mean this was hell after all. I selected the pamphlet, and into my hand popped a small, actual piece of paper titled PrimeVerse Primer. Cute. That's what happens when you let Jimmy from marketing help design a game. PrimeVerse Primer. Welcome, new resident of PrimeVerse. By now, your old meat body has been utilized to its fullest. Thank you for your contribution. You have stepped foot on a new journey for humankind, the journey to a life that will never end. You have started as a blank slate. The sky is the limit. Be all you can be. You are now in PrimeVerse. We built PrimeVerse on the backs of many of the most popular VR games, with one goal: to make the most realistic, fantastic world for you and your fellow residents to live and thrive in. You can live, laugh, and love. You can feel pain, hatred, and anguish. This world allows you the full range of human experiences while also granting abilities unheard of. Will you unlock the secrets of magic? Will you study the blade or bow? Will you attempt to recreate the technology of the world you left behind? Anything is possible. At its creation, the world is devoid of NPCs, unlike most current games. Any human you meet should be a real person. Welcome to a pristine new world for you to discover and play in. There are no buildings, no shops, nothing but a beautiful open expanse for you to determine what to do with. The world is your canvas. Be warned, however, dangerous creatures and enemies may lurk around the corner, so learn to defend yourself. We have brought you here with no knowledge of this new world. It is up to you and your fellow citizens to make PrimeVerse be the best it can be. All the skills our computer intelligence thought of are implemented. Try something to see if you can level up the skill. For more information, or to dive right in, activate your cube. The pictures in the primer were the typical things you would find on the back of a video game box. Oddly dressed people doing questy stuff, casting spells, fighting and collecting treasures. A few hints there, I guess magic existed, but it reiterated this is very much a game world. For better or worse, it wasn't going to be like normal life. When I got to the end, a pop-up appeared in my HUD. Quest received. The journey begins. Activate your cube to learn more about your new life and to move on to the next adventure. I closed my inventory and went back to my character sheet, leaving the equipment screen and selecting the skills list. This thing went on and on and on. There were skills for everything. I couldn't read what the skills did, only a huge list of what was available. I scrolled through all the A's, but when I got to bartending, I quit, realizing that if I wanted to do something, there was probably a skill for it. I was curious about that toughness skill I had unlocked, and looked at it on my sheet. Toughness. Each level of this skill reduces the pain you feel by 0.5% and increases the time between pulses for the pain debuff by 0.25 seconds. That seemed like a nice skill, although I bet leveling it up meant getting hurt a lot. Yay, experience pain to experience less pain in the future, so fun. Full, warm, and content, I decided to take time to figure out my goals. I couldn't keep throwing a tantrum and stay in the tutorial zone forever. At the same time, I didn't want to leave all that quickly. I wanted to enjoy this island retreat. Who knows what kind of crap they would force me to go through past the tutorial zone. While I love games, I never experienced one of those mythical vacations that only middle management and above gets. Why look a gift horse in the face? So, that was it then. I would take a vacation. I would stay here on this island paradise, learn as much as I could until I felt ready, and rest up. In the few VR games I'd tried, I could see and somewhat feel the environment, but this place took it to a whole other level. This may as well be reality for how, real it felt. Of course, I did have to be murdered and all my brains sucked out in order to get this level of reality, so I guess it kind of made sense. So, that was that. I'd ignore the cube and take some much-deserved me time and enjoy myself here on this tiny paradise. Congratulations, you have learned the obstinance skill. Although I might have to change my mind if those pop-ups kept popping up. Chapter 2. My first few days I spent relaxing, eating, swimming, and absolutely enjoying myself. I also had the pleasure of learning about all the natural biological things the devs did not skimp on in the programming. I don't know how much they paid the guy who programmed the "I gotta pee" feeling into the game, but it probably wasn't enough. He did a great job. Honestly, it was kind of a drag having all the necessary biological functions in a digital world. I even felt tired when staying up too long, and at one point noticed my stamina draining just because I hadn't slept in over a day. I also found that there was a maximum score I could raise my skills and attributes to when my physique went to 10 on a jog around the island. You have achieved a milestone in your physique attribute. Average physique. Stamina now regenerates at a rate of 1 every 4 seconds while resting and 1 every 10 seconds while in use. You cannot gain more points in physique while in the tutorial zone. It looked like they put a limit to how much you could do in this zone. I was starting to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but then it was a they who built this world. I eyeballed my stamina bar while sitting, and noticed it seemed to go up faster than before, if only barely. I read the primer section on physique. Physique. Physique determines your overall health. The higher your physique, the more HP you have. Physique also determines how fast your stamina regenerates. I had been experimenting with everything I could think of on my vacation, and raised some of my attributes to almost the same level as my physique. The game was divided into attributes and skills, with attributes being the representations of your personhood in all its physical, digital glory, and skills being representations of things you could do. The amount of skills was that huge list I had looked at before, but they were all tied to a base attribute, or most times to several base attributes. Digging, for example, tied into both strength and physique. Attributes were broken down into 4 main segments: body, mind, heart, and soul. with each of those segments having 3 attributes and an expendable resource associated with it. There was strength, agility, and physique for body, with stamina being the expendable resource. Mind comprised conscious, subconscious, and superconscious, with mana as the expendable. Heart was empathy, projection, and emotion, with zeal as the expendable. And soul comprised self, aura, and connection, with spirit as the expendable resource. It looked like the expendable resources were pools equal to the amount of levels in the total of any segment, plus the base of 100. My stamina, for instance, was 120 due to my 10 physique, 7 strength, and 3 agility, and 100 just for existing. All very exciting stuff, I know. I worked towards getting a handful of other skills up to their tutorial zone max as well. Swimming, running, climbing, etc. I was feeling like I wasn't a clumsy doofus by the end of the 3rd day. Then I died. I had been out swimming, trying to raise my diving skill, and checking out the awesome coral reef I had found. It was spectacular. The fish were an incredible array of so many colors and impossibly vivid. I had just gotten a level in my breath retention skill, and was following a particularly interesting fish when my foot got caught between 2 rocks. I was already almost out of breath when the drowning meter showed up. I have to admit I panicked. I could tell because a debuff popped up called Panic. It was a blue box with a pictogram of a person with exclamation marks circling its head and an 80% in the corner. I didn't have enough wherewithal to read the debuff as I struggled to dislodge myself. After using what little air I had left flailing around like a fish out of water, but, a person in water, my foot wiggled free. Scrambling toward the surface and sweet, sweet air, my lungs gave out, filled with water, and I drowned. It sucked. I still wanted to know why the devs had made things hurt as much as they did. Pain-free living would have been A-OK with me. So, I was dead. When I opened my eyes, I was in a tunnel made of a weird, inky blackness with a bright light at the end. Cliché, right? I stared at the light, feeling its brightness suffuse me with peace and bliss. I lost myself and all sense of time in the subtle pleasure of the light. As I got closer to the event horizon, the pleasure grew greater and greater, until I found myself spawned at my original starting spot. That was odd. Maybe it was their way to relieve you of the pains your death had brought. There didn't seem to be any permanent penalties for death, at least not in the tutorial zone anyway. Congratulations, you have died. Death debuff. -1 to all attributes and skills for 1 minute. That was an easy debuff to deal with, but I was assuming it got worse later. Deaths 1 appeared on my character sheet. Wonderful. After dying, I decided it was time to get more into the game and explore this island better. Plus, as good as the coconuts tasted, I was getting sick of them. There had to be other things to eat here. So, off I went, in search of adventure and a source of dietary breadth. I learned quickly that there were indeed other things here, things that did not in fact like me much at all. I was walking into the forest towards the large hill that made up the tallest part of the island. I wanted to see what I could see from the top and was enjoying this gentle hike. Deeper into the forest, or maybe it was a jungle, I don't know. There were a lot of trees. No vines or quicksand. Is that a real thing? Though, so I'll call it a forest. Further into the forest than I had ever gone, the sun barely sneaking its way inside the full trees. There was a loud screeching, followed by a sharp rock that suddenly assaulted me in the head. A Yowler monkey has hit you with a rock for 7 bludgeoning damage. Ah! What the heck? Another rock hit me. Covering my head, I spun around and saw a tree with several monkeys screeching and throwing rocks at me. These little twits were vicious and unrelenting, jumping from branch to branch, throwing sticks and rocks and... other more disgusting things, all the while taunting me with their laugh-like screams. I tried throwing rocks back at them, but my agility was just too low, and they dodged everything as if thrown.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?